Today we're going to take a look at the 2023 Honda Ruckus. We'll talk about where this 49cc scooter, also known as the Zoomer in other corners of the world, fits into Honda's current model lineup, and we'll dive into its specs and features, what changed for this year, and a lot more as we go over everything you need to know about one of Honda's most popular scooters from over the last couple of decades. But first, if you guys find any info in this video helpful, please take a second and hit the like button. Liking the video and throwing a comment below really helps with growing this channel through YouTube's algorithm, which in return helps me create more videos for you guys, and I really appreciate the help. So first up, where does a Ruckus fit into Honda's rather anemic scooter model lineup for the USA? Let's quickly run through them. Now, Honda makes a ton of models we don't get here in the States, but here's what we do have to choose from, with the Metropolitan starting us off with the same 49cc engine size like the Ruckus for $25.99, but there are some key features that set their engines apart from each other, and we'll dive more into those a little later. Then we move up to the Ruckus that we're looking at today that bumps you up to $28.99, which is followed up by the PCX 160 at $38.99. Then you have the ADV 150 that comes in at $42.99, but that's soon to be replaced by the new ADV 160 that hasn't been officially announced yet by American Honda, and you can check out a sneak peek look at it in my video from last week by clicking up here. Now, some of you may be asking, where's the NAVi? Well, for some odd reason, Honda isn't listing it under scooters on their website. Instead, it's under miniMOTO, but this little 110cc bike is a scooter, so we'll lump it in here, and it's packing the cheapest price tag of the bunch at only $1,807. And if you'd like to learn more about any of those models, check out some of my past videos. And now that we've got that out of the way, let's jump into some more info on the Ruckus. Now, do you have any options when buying the Ruckus in 2023? Unlike some models with different braking and transmission options, the only options you have with the Ruckus come down to color choices, and for this year you have this white and metallic blue combo, which has to be my favorite as the metallic blue really pops when you get it in the light, and then you have gray followed up by midnight blue and tan. Now, let's get into the chassis and suspension. Its frame is made up of multiple pieces, and up front you have a die-cast aluminum front section with the upper rear frame being made out of steel. For suspension up front, you have a very basic and non-adjustable fork that brings in, wait for it, 1.93 inches of travel, which is laughable on a full-size motorcycle, but you have to keep in mind this is a small and slow scooter that wasn't designed to be an adventure bike, despite the off-road-ish looking tires on it. However, if you want to crack your wallet open, there are a ton of aftermarket suspension options out there, but for the average person, you won't ever think twice about it. While out back, you have a single-sided swing arm with a single shock mounted on the left side that brings in 2.56 inches of travel with no adjustability here either. And helping the suspension do its thing are a set of 10-inch wheels front and rear with a set of wide Kenda K761 dual sport tires wrapped around them, and for sizing you have a 120/90 up front and a 130/90 in the rear, which leads us to another one of the many upsides to these small bikes. When it comes time to replace those tires, you've got quite a few options out there, and some can be had for less than $100 a set. Then when it comes to slowing those wheels down, we're headed back to the 1900s for a set of drum brakes with a 95mm setup in the front, and out back you've got a matching mechanical drum brake. And to finish up the chassis side of things, we'll hit on a few numbers, and its curb weight comes in at 194 pounds, which is 15 pounds heavier than its 49cc sibling, the Metropolitan. The Ruckus has a pretty low 28.9-inch seat height, which opens the door for a lot of vertically challenged people, but depending on how challenged you are, you may want to check out the Metro as it comes in at 28.3 inches. However, if curb hopping is in your future while bringing out your inner hooligan around town, the Ruckus does bring in an extra 1.6 inches of ground clearance over the Metro. Next up, let's get into the engine and drivetrain. The Ruckus has a 49cc 4-stroke overhead cam 2-valve liquid-cooled 3-degree single-cylinder engine. It makes a touch over 4 horsepower and 3 foot-pounds of torque, so yeah, you're not going to win many drag races there, but it's enough to propel an average-sized person on a Ruckus to a top speed of right around the 35-mile-an-hour mark, and if you're a lightweight that finds a strong enough backwind, down a hill you might be able to get up to around the 40 mark. If you need to go faster, again, the aftermarket support for these bikes is insane, so all you have to do is open up that wallet and start Googling. Now, I won't bore you guys with detailed engine specs, but one thing to keep in mind if you're shopping, the Ruckus does have a carburetor, specifically an 18mm constant velocity carb with an automatic choke. Is that a bad thing? Well, it depends on how you look at it. Some people love it, and some people don't want to buy anything with a carb these days, so it's definitely a case-by-case basis, but just something to keep in mind, as the Metropolitan is fuel injected, as are all of the other scooters from Honda, except the Ruckus and NAVi. So how about the transmission? Since this is a scooter, it's utilizing Honda's VMATIC CVT setup, which means it's a fully automatic. Unlike with Honda's DCT and HFT automatic transmissions, where you have neutral and drive to select or different drive modes, with the Ruckus, you just hold the rear brake, press the start button to fire up, twist the throttle, and you're off. It doesn't get any easier than that. On the fuel economy side of things, Honda rates the Ruckus at 114 miles per gallon, and with a 1.3 gallon fuel tank, if we do a little math, that puts your range right around the 140-ish mile mark before you're pushing it. Now when it comes to maintaining this engine, thankfully there's not a lot to it, with oil changes coming up every 2,500 miles and valve inspections every 15,000 miles, and for comparison's sake, the Metropolitan is every 4,000 miles for oil changes and valve inspections. Now let's bounce around the bike and touch on a few different things. Storage. Do you have any? Well, you've got all this open space here, but as you can see, you can't just throw stuff in there and expect it to stay. Surprisingly, even after all these years, Honda still doesn't offer any OEM accessory options for storage under the seat, but thankfully you've got quite a few aftermarket options to fit under the seat, and I'll have some of them linked below for you guys to check out. And when it comes to rider controls and electronics, it's pretty basic, and that's a bonus for a lot of people. But the more we creep up on that $3,000 price tag though, that originally started at $1,899, the more difficult it's becoming to convince people that this is the bargain it once was. But before I get too sidetracked on that, let's get back on topic. On the right side, you have your throttle and front brake lever, with the left lever for your rear brakes, and the smaller lever here is for your parking brake in the back. For gauges, you've got a super simple setup with your speedometer and odometer, with a little engine temp warning light in there too, and with your high beam and low fuel indicators down here. Now let's start it up and show you what she sounds like, and then we'll come back for a few more things. And that's the 2023 Honda Ruckus. So what did Honda change for this year? The only change for 2023 comes in the way of pricing, with a $100 increase over last year, which leads me to a couple of questions for you guys. What do you think about the Ruckus as a whole, and what do you think Honda should change on it, if anything? Would you like to see them keep it a 49cc but throw fuel injection at it like the Zoomer had in other corners of the world? Or would you like to see Honda throw a larger engine in it, like the 110 setup from the NAVi, or better yet, the new 4-valve 160 engine? With almost 16 horsepower, this little thing would fly, and I'd bet money it would really set the Ruckus hype train on fire again, like it used to be, and they could even bring back the Big Ruckus nameplate. With the introduction of all these mini-MOTO models that aren't that much more expensive, Ruckus sales have taken a hit over the years, and due to such strict emissions in other corners of the world, there aren't a lot of countries that still import them. So you would think a simple engine swap and slight tweak here and there would be beneficial for Honda to do, and in return, spark new interest in an old platform. It's going to be interesting though to see what happens with the Ruckus over the coming years, and if they don't throw any updates at it soon, it's still a great package, even though it was rolled out more than 20 years ago. And yes, these things aren't cheap, but if you take care of it, it'll run for decade after decade, and that can't be said about a lot of the knockoff scooters out there. But before I ramble on even more for the 3 of you left watching, that's a wrap for this one. Let me know what you're thinking down in the comments section, and I'll be joining in on the conversation too. Thanks again for watching and supporting all of this. I really appreciate it, guys, and we'll see you in the next one. But first,